3 years after the global disruption, UPLB remained a leader in higher education and research in the Philippines and Asia. Amidst these unique challenges, UPLB was at the forefront, creating solutions and innovations that not only allowed it to overcome immediate problems, but to thrive and build for the future. Foremost among these is the new UPLB Research and Extension Agenda. Accelerating growth through One Research and Extension in Action, or UPLB Agora, seeks to make UPLB a marketplace of innovation and future research and development. The UPLB Agora focuses on food security and sovereignty, resilience and sustainability, future communities and institutions, and One Health to make our initiatives more relevant and aligned with the global sustainable development goals. We are also pushing for technology commercialization, ensuring that UPLB's wealth of knowledge reaches and benefits the communities. Through our partnerships, we were able to kickstart the commercialization of several UPLB technologies. These efforts are beginning to bear fruit with two licensed technologies, Sinta Papaya and Carrageenan Fertilizer, earning nearly 600,000 pesos in royalty fees in 2021. UPLB is also building up more avenues for partnerships with the industry through the Agro-Industrial Park, Information Technology Park, or the AIP-ITP, a special economic zone on campus. In the past year, we have continued our discussions with our stakeholders to ensure that the AIP-ITP will foster innovation and creativity and bring additional revenues for UPLB and benefit surrounding communities. We successfully expanded our network of higher education institutions, connected with more industry partners, and established new associate, bachelor, and graduate programs. This will enable us to contribute more to the training and professionalization of the country's workforce. More UPLB programs are in the pipeline. With these developments, the UPLB population is expected to grow. In anticipation of the increasing demands for facilities, UPLB broke ground for several infrastructure projects envisioned to support UPLB's growing population of students, faculty, and staff. These plans are aligned with UPLB's approved Land Use Development and Infrastructure Plan, which will guide our infrastructure and land use in the coming years. As we grew as an educational institution, UPLB also implemented programs for the welfare of students and personnel. We provided financial assistance and mental health services to students and partnered with medical institutions to maximize health benefits for our employees. Moving forward, we aim to use the hard lessons of the pandemic to future-proof UPLB with agility and a clear sense of approach and purpose. Guided by the principles of compassion and innovation, UPLB looks to the future with vigilance and preparedness so that it may continue to excel as the national university.
In the southernmost part of the Philippines lies Mindanao,
the country's food basket and a major contributor to national export and trade. As an emerging center and gateway for Southeast Asian trade, Mindanao faces growing prospects for development. This makes urgent the need to transform and professionalize its human capital to fully maximize these opportunities. In line with the national agenda for inclusive development through collaborative partnerships between the government, academia and industry, the University of the Philippines Los Baños and Anflo Management and Investment Corporation established the UP Professional School for Agriculture and the Environment, or UP-PISAE. Based in the agritourism site of Agria, Panabo City in Davao del Norte, the UP-PISAE aims to accelerate development in Mindanao by bringing UPLB's expertise in agriculture, forestry, and environmental science to the Philippine South. It envisions to train professionals who are immersed in the social and industry needs of Mindanao and equip them with higher-level knowledge and skills to create research-based interdisciplinary solutions. It aims to capacitate local government units, state universities and colleges, and industry professionals in these areas. With its off-campus graduate programs and short courses, UP-PISAE is an accessible hub for knowledge sharing in agriculture, environmental science, and related disciplines. The professional school offers a rich learning experience for students by linking them directly to experts and providing them access to knowledge resources using information and communication technology. Its industry partners act as field laboratories where students can apply practical research to real-world scenarios and create new knowledge relevant to the needs of the industry. The UP-PISAE also disseminates knowledge through various learning activities that promote discussions about agriculture and the environment, encouraging linkages that lead to further collaborative efforts. As an extension campus of UPLB, the UP-PISAE strengthens the National University's mandate to make research, graduate programs, and public service initiatives responsive to the needs of the Filipino people and to contribute to social progress and transformation. The UP Professional School for Agriculture and the Environment. UP Education within reach. In line with UPLB's thrust toward creating and strengthening partnerships between academe and industry, it is establishing the UPLB Agro-Industrial Park and Information Technology Park, or the AIP-ITP. Soon to become a hub for innovation and agro-industrial growth in this part of Calabarzon, AIP-ITP will promote robust academe-industry partnerships. It will provide a venue for commercialization of UPLB technologies. AIP-ITP will serve as a training ground for university students, making them industry-ready upon graduation. Located in UPLB's Special Economic Zone, the AIP-ITP will offer investment opportunities that will generate business and employment for surrounding communities. Its designated zones for agribusiness, information technology, and research and development will become a haven for both startup and mature companies and government agencies, giving them access to the talent pool of UPLB and the surrounding universities. As an interaction hub of both research and industrial projects, it will bring the latest breakthroughs and UPLB's expertise within reach of investors and business partners, leading to the creation of updated and relevant initiatives that will contribute to the growth of the agriculture, forestry, and fishery sectors, promote the adoption of technology, stimulate innovation, and accelerate human capital development. By combining UPLB's continuous pursuit of academic and research excellence with the growth and opportunities of the industry, the AIP-ITP is envisioned to enhance development and catalyze dynamic social transformation in the region. The agribusiness sector is experiencing a period of significant change. New agricultural and information technology developments, changing consumer preferences and consumption patterns due to rising demands for more sustainable business practices, and a wider and interconnected global market have had implications on every part of the agricultural value chain. To navigate this volatile landscape, the agriculture industry needs innovative and entrepreneurial leaders who can maximize growth opportunities for their organizations. These new leaders are you. The University of the Philippines Los Baños designed the executive program in agribusiness management and entrepreneurship with your needs in mind, where you can learn with experienced professionals and through practical experience. Through this program, we will help you transform your competencies as managers and executives into assets that will help your organization grow and succeed. Crafted by experts from the UPLB Department of Agribusiness Management and Entrepreneurship at the College of Economics and Management, this executive program will guide you through the tools and skills that you need as the next top leaders in your field. You'll learn how to generate insightful and effective agribusiness strategies, achieve sustainable and long-term growth, and expand through the opportunities available in a globalized world. This program is held through in-person classes led by UP's economics and business practitioners and is divided into 5 modules. Each 16-hour module is conducted in a series of sessions composed of discussions, workshops, and case studies complemented with structured discussion on various business management tools. Get in touch with us through the UP Professional School for Agriculture and the Environment. Are you ready to upgrade? Take the UPLB Executive Program in Agribusiness Management and Entrepreneurship and lead your organization to the next level.
Sir, future proof na po. Yun yung last na po. Ayan sir, last 4 minutes na to. Ano sir? Lupot lang. Paksa po.
The world is in a constant state of change now more than ever. It's a world that requires resilience, flexibility, and innovation to overcome challenges and to pursue growth. That is why the University of the Philippines Los Baños is pursuing future-proofing initiatives to provide agile leadership and develop local and global communities amidst shocks and disruptions in an ever-changing world. Guided by compassion, an openness to working together, and a daring to seek out breakthroughs, UPLB constantly pushes for academic excellence, produces relevant research, establishes academic and industry partnerships, and cultivates creativity, critical thinking, and innovation. To keep up with the fast-changing world and to strive for inclusivity in development, UPLB seeks to level the playing field and expand avenues for acquiring new knowledge. It is reshaping the learning experience, enabling students and educators to continue with the learning process in vastly different learning conditions. It is expanding its academic programs and supporting initiatives to create a conducive learning environment. To address the growing complexities of modern problems, UPLB continues to break barriers across disciplines to produce cutting edge innovations and solutions that serve the needs of various communities. It is taking on challenges in food security and sustainability and coordinating research efforts to direct the university's resources toward critical research areas, making sure that the university generated knowledge can reach its intended stakeholders and be applied to real life contexts. UPLB is dedicated to its commitment to contribute to public good and social welfare as it continues to work with the local government and the community to address their most pressing needs. Amidst its engagements, UPLB remains as one of the top regional and global universities and continues to be recognized in the country and across the world. As the national university, UPLB aims to be a steadfast partner in development as a producer of new approaches that minimize the cost and impacts of future shocks, and by honing leaders committed to knowledge creation, innovation, and cutting edge research and public service. This is UPLB's roadmap to be an impactful institution in a constantly changing landscape. Responsive, innovative, future proof.
would like to request everyone to settle down. We'll start in a few moments. Thank you. Once again, we would like to request everyone to settle down. We'll start in a few moments now. Thank you very much. On its 1379th meeting, the University of the Philippines Board of Regents institutionalized a new Doctor of Philosophy program.
The institutionalization of this program highlights the role of the UP Los Baños School of Environmental Science and Management as a pioneer in environmental education, not just in the Philippines, but in Southeast Asia as well.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the launching of the Doctor of Philosophy in Environmental Diplomacy and Negotiations. My name is Tad Lawas.
And my name is Patricia Sanchez. The new PhD EDN program will be offered by UPLB through the School of Environmental Science and Management starting this coming first semester school year 2023 to 2024.
Before we move forward, may I request everyone to stand up for the singing of the Philippine National Anthem.
for the opening remarks. May I call in the Dean of the School of Environmental Science and Management and UP scientist, Dr. Rico C. Angkog.
The members of the diplomatic community, to the officers and officials of government agencies, to the University of the Philippines system officials. Of course, we'll have President or Attorney Angelo Jimenez later, but we have also Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Leo Cobillan, sir. Also to the members of the UP Board of Regents, we have Faculty Regent Carl Mark Ramota, sir. A very pleasant afternoon. To the national scientist, Dr. Luli Cruz, ma'am. And then, of course, to the University of the Philippines, Los Baños officials, led by our dear Chancellor, Jose V. Camacho Jr. Chancellor, good afternoon. To the Vice Chancellors, we have Vice Chancellor Sereno, Vice Chancellor Silva, and to a number of the deans of UP Los Baños, di nag-visit. Thank you very much. We have also a number of officials from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, later. And then, of course, to a number of organizations present this afternoon and agencies who are very much supportive of the very reason why we are all here. It is surely our honor to welcome each and every one of you, our dear guests, to the technical session of the launching event of the PhD in Environmental Diplomacy and Negotiations. For us at UPLB, particularly at CESAM, we view this event as a major milestone of the school's history. CESAM is mandated to champion sustainability concepts, operationalizing or being operationalized through interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary research, instruction, public service work, particularly in the field of environmental science. For the longest time, CESAM has advanced the science and the practice of environmental science. Science related to forests, to land, to air, water, and people. Through instruction, research, extension, and public service work, CESAM has a long history related to this. But now is a reflection of what the school has actually conducted or engaged for the past decades. There has been a paradigm shift in the way we view environmental science and the way we practice environmental management. We understand that indeed there is a call for a shift in our perspective. So ladies and gentlemen, today is a very important day for all of us, since we are not only celebrating the World Environment Day, that is today, but also, indeed, we are then offering, as a university, the launching of the newest degree program of the University of the Philippines system, particularly in UPLB, the PhD in Environmental Diplomacy and Negotiations. I hope you will indulge me, to be offered primarily by the School of Environmental Science and Management, but we'll always work with different colleges within UPLB, different institutions, of course, within the UP system, and our partner agencies, even beyond the UP system. The UP system and the entire diplomatic community, just like particularly in CESAM, are very much delighted about this program, since this is the first of its kind in the Philippines. And we hope that this one will then be a good catalyst for more paradigm-shifting work in environmental science and environmental management. We all work within a region, the Southeast Asian region, where transboundary issues, conflicts, and disputes related to pollution, resource utilization are very, very much rampant. The launching of this new program is very timely, since it recognizes the significance of interdisciplinary approaches in resolving multidimensional issues to ensure environmental conservation, pursuing multilateralism, while we're then banking on nation building, and then aspired regional growth, shared growth. With this, I would like to really express our sincerest appreciation on behalf of the School of Environmental Science and Management to the UP system, to UPLB, particularly to dear Chancellor Camacho, for making this program possible. The PhD in Environmental Diplomacy and Negotiations will provide a holistic analysis on the gaps of existing international laws, treaties, and agreements impacting the environment in several countries. It will also explore integrative approaches and institutional arrangements in protecting the common heritage and the right to self-preservation of nations and its states. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. We look forward to producing quality graduates, professionals, and leaders that will then uphold UP's mantra of honor and excellence now in environmental diplomacy and international negotiations. Thank you very much and a pleasant afternoon to one and all.
Thank you, Dean Rico, for giving us the rationale of the PhD EDN program and the importance of this launching, not just for the academia, but also for the different sectors which are represented right now in this event.
All right, Tad. We're very thankful for the presence of our guests from the academe, from the government offices, international agencies, private institutions, and the military. Yes, they're here. And also from the diplomatic community as well.
Yes, and to give us a special message to our guest, please welcome the Chancellor of University of the Philippines, Los Baños, Dr. Jose V. Camacho Jr.
Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Good afternoon to our distinguished guests. This is a gathering of friends, of partners, and I would say forerunners of SESAM and the supporters of SESAM. Of course, I can see Ma'am Luli Cruz, national scientist, been joining us since day one of in the conceptualization of this project. Dr. Glenn Gregorio there will be again bothered with various proposals that we wish to bring to his table. Dr. Malayang, Ben Malayang. First Dean kayo, sir, no? The first Dean of SESAM. Yeah, the first Dean of SESAM. Tingnan nyo, hanggang ngayon, nandyan pa si, palakpakan nyo po si Dr. Malayang. Hindi kayo pinababayaan kahit na siya ay nag-move noon sa DNR. Ano? And of course, my fellow university officials led by former Chancellor Dindo Sanchez, who, by the way, is an alumnus of SESAM. No? And fellow deans and the vice chancellors. At sa UP system, we have our faculty regent, Carl Ramota, and Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Leo Cubillan. And to all the important supporters tonight or this afternoon, they will be honored, they'll be introduced. I'm so confused because I thought there will only be one or two sessions or program today, but I was informed that there'll be more to come. Papunta pa lang tayo sa exciting part, sabi nga nila. But yeah, this is really an exciting days for SESAM. Today they started the program, which with the flag raising ceremony this morning, and I thought they'll be presenting a cultural presentation because I thought I'll be seeing Dr. Contreras with his costume for winning the Palaro baile. Yeah, sinong partner mo, sir? Yeah. Later siguro you can provide a special number mamaya sa entertainment. Yeah. And then yeah, the Dr. Contreras. And yes, this afternoon we'll also be joined by our president, President Gigil. And they really see this, he really sees this important achievement of SESAM, the launching of the PhD, Environmental Science and Negotiation. I'll do away with my message because I just wish to express my overwhelming inspiration, inspiring, and the overwhelming support of our stakeholders, both from the government and from the private sectors. But just to let you know that when this was initiated, and as early as during the term of President rather, former Dean Days Lava, she reported that she was initiating the institution of this program together with former Vice Chancellor Vicky Spaldon, and they introduced many developments in Sesam. It's just like a the accomplishment report of Dinday. If you recall Dinday, nagpapaalam ka na noon kasi may gusto ko pang gawin kaya ayaw mo nang maging dean. But we're so glad that finally, with the support of the UP administration, I thought that the PhD development studies would have the shortest duration of approval. But nakon ho yun. Na-demolish po yung history ng DEB studies because less than a year, we sought the approval of the Board of Regents. But for this PhD in environmental diplomacy and negotiation, I think it only took, Dean Rico, less than a year, no? Less than what the development studies has had during our time, no? And really, we really thank the people, the steering committee that you created. It really speaks of the faculty members and the staff commitment to come up with an innovative program. And I need not elaborate on what makes this an innovative program, but suffice to say that this is the first in the country. And perhaps in the word of Dean Rico this morning, I hope other universities in the Southeast Asia won't claim it, that this is the first. No? This is the first environmental science program focusing on negotiation and diplomacy. And we're excited to launch this even before it's launching. In our visit with the universities abroad, we've been telling about this. And in fact, when we went to Canada for the comparative environmental education conference, and we met Dalhousie University in Canada, and other former friends, I would say friends or supporters of SESAM when during its inception. Dalhousie was indeed very excited to come up again with a new, renewed partnership with SESAM. And I think, Dean Rico, you're witness to that because the vice president of Dalhousie, we had a Zoom meeting. It was early morning in the Philippines, and mornings. It was during the morning session of the conference in Canada, and they're very excited. And we'll be signing a renewal of agreement so that Dalhousie and other universities in Canada will be supporting SESAM, not just in terms of research, but also in terms of faculty development and student mobility. Again, in light of this important development, the accomplishment of SESAM, particularly the launching of today's program. So with that, I hope the best is yet to come for SESAM, a center of excellence in environmental education, in research and innovation. And yeah, let's enjoy the presence of our leaders, our supporters, our stakeholders, and magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat.
Thank you very much, Chancellor Camacho, for your continuing support to SESAM and for elaborating the role of UPLB in solving different environmental challenges. Now, let us call in UP VP for Academic Affairs, Dr. Leo Cubillan, for a short message.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. To our guests of honors, member of the diplomatic community, we have also the Director Al Orolfo of DNR. We have Director Marianne Acidera of Picard, UST, Glenn Gregorio of Siarca, and Regent Carl Ramota from UP, or BOR, and Chancellor Dong Camacho. We have former Chancellor Dindo Sanchez, Dean Rico Angkog, former Dean Ben Malayang, and of course our national scientist Lourdes Cruz, and the UPLB officials who are here, faculty of SESAM, and I'm hoping there are some students here, and hopefully future students of our PhD program who would be interested in this program this coming school year. In behalf of our university president and university officials, I'd like to congratulate your team, no? And with under the leadership of Dean Dong Camacho for this the successful launching of, the creation of this curricular program. I'm excited to be here because we're supporting your faculty under the leadership of Dean Camacho for a very progressive program and approach to the activities we have in the university, Dean. And I think based on what you said earlier, this is a significant milestone for UP, and is being the first in the country, and Southeast Asia. So this is the first program specific for this particular track, and creating pioneering programs align well with our university mandate as the national university in this country and as a leader in graduate education. I was listening earlier. I know it's under my office. It's difficult to create programs. There are many stages, and I guess with the support, with the big support of this, it was done in less than a year. And actually, the idea of creating programs for the university, because we have 8 constituent universities, and as it goes through the different stages, we are able to present this to our different CUs so that it would be easy for them to adapt in the future as we expand. And what is really important for us is when we create programs, we are addressing issues in the nation, and in this case, the region and the world, to produce future scientists and leaders in this field. The relevance and impact of this program is very important. As I read your briefer, and that it's able to merge the realm of environmental science and diplomatic negotiation. We are empowering our students to addressing global challenges through evidence-based strategies. That's what we do in the academe. And as stated in the brochure, we are positioning science as foundation for national and international negotiations. So we foresee that our graduates will play a vital role in shaping future policies of this in this country and the nation, and foster cooperation and sustainable solution, as these environmental issues are very complex. So I guess we really need experts and leaders to forge this negotiation. And happy World Environment Day to everyone. Together, let's create greener and more resilient future for our planet and generation to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, VP Kubilian. Now, to have a deeper appreciation of the new PhD program in environmental diplomacy and negotiations, we will have a roundtable discussion. And this will be led by former Vice Chancellor for Research and Extension, former Dean of CESAM, and also a UP scientist, Dr. Maria Victoria Espaldon.
Special. I feel like President GMA. Okay, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, let me greet everyone in this hall a glorious afternoon. To the member of the diplomatic community, to our very important friends and guests, to our university officials, VP for Academic Affairs, Dr. Codillan, our Chancellor, who's always been very supportive and have a very good ear for listening to us and putting input and discussing with us, Chancellor Camacho, to our former Chancellor, syempre, si Dr. Dindo Sanchez, who is also our alumni sa CESAM, and all the deans and university officials here, our Dean Rico Angcog, to our colleagues and scholars in environmental science and related discipline. This is one of the most significant milestones for the School of Environmental Science of UPLB. So thank you very much for joining us today. This technical session was actually organized to provide our stakeholders and partners in environmental action a venue to discuss the whys and directions of environmental science and movement in the country. Almost 25 years ago, Ben, used to be our dean, former dean, UPLB through CESAM has ventured into forging and strengthening the science of the environment through the launch of the first PhD program of CESAM, the PhD in Environmental Science. It was 25 years ago. The time when interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary science is a big debate. Its main goal is to train professionals and foster a strong scientific support for environmental education, environmental management, and environmental leadership, and thus contribute to the conservation and management of the natural and environmental resources of the country. We have gone far into it. We produce scientists and leaders and managers, both at the local and national level, and even international level. The program in environmental science has spread throughout the country via our state universities and colleges, and even in the neighboring ASEAN countries, where our interdisciplinary approaches and environmental thought process have found fertile grounds to grow and develop into full-blown academic programs and to some extent in the governance of natural and environmental resources here and abroad. Today, we are moving forward with a new set of wings. While we recognize that science of the environment has aided significantly in understanding, identifying, and prioritizing pressing environmental issues like continued environmental degradation and climate change emergencies, which are connected to a seemingly never-ending cycle of poverty and conflicts, we at UP are cognizant of pushing science further into the forefront of environmental diplomacy and negotiations. We believe that we need to position science as one of the integral components for international, national, and local negotiations for the environment and into the fray of environmental conflicts and the politics of dominance. Today, we have here with us a brilliant scholar, a passionate and seasoned civil servant, and professional diplomat to provide us insights into the challenges and opportunities in environmental diplomacy and negotiation. For who will speak for the environment, but as humans whose survival and quality of life depends on the equilibrium and integrity of the environment. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is truly an honor to introduce the speakers for this technical session. The first speaker is Dr. Ben S. Malayang III. We call him simply Ben. And he is Ben to many of us, but actually, we are all his students. He is presently Emeritus Professor of Silliman University. I promise this is going to be 200 words. He's very sensitive about introductions. He is presently Professor Emeritus of Silliman University, an eminent fellow and member of the Academic Council of the Development Academy of the Philippines. Ben is also a senior fellow of the Southeast Asian Regional Center for Graduate Study and Research for Agriculture. Isang kilometro, no? Ang haba. Or CIRCA. He is also formerly the president of Silliman University for 15 years. Prior to serving as president of Silliman University, he served as professor and our first dean of the School of Environmental Science and Management at UPLB. To date, he is considered one of the pillars of SESAM and of environmental science program in the Philippines. Known for his brilliance both in academic and management skills, he also served the government as undersecretary of the DNR with our former DNR Secretary, Angel Alcala, from 1992 to 1995. Dr. Malayang has a PhD in Wildland Resource and Science from University of California, Berkeley, a double MA in philosophy. One is for international affairs, and one is on philosophy, philosophy, from Ohio University. He completed his BA in philosophy at UP Diliman in 1974. So, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Dr. Ben Malaya.
So, Excellencies and friends, we need diplomacy and negotiations because we're always in trouble over our environment. Environmental disputes are as common and widespread as there are many of us in the planet. I submit to you some thoughts on environmental disputes and on why environmental schools and scholars should include diplomacy and negotiations as among their academic interests. Let me begin with environmental disputes. Once, when there were less of us on the planet, and Earth was healthy and abounding in natural wealth, we had what Peter Zeihan refers to as a good geography of demographic success. We were surviving and thriving in many places in our planet. But over time, with us starting to grow in numbers and intensifying our appetite for Earth's riches, we began to impose ourselves a bit too much on Earth's goodwill. We wanted more, and there were many more of us wanting to have more. We developed new ways and tools to satisfy our widening wants for what Earth has. And inevitably, we crept closer to the limits of what Earth can give. We're actually being cruel and harsh on our planet. Raquel Carson, the Brundtland Commission, 2 Earth summits, and many panels and conferences of our scientists have been telling us that we were sapping Earth of its energy and health. Now, we're paying the price for not listening. Crop yields are declining in many places, flooding and fires in more areas of the world, more people dying of ailments linked to dirtier air, waters, and surroundings. And we're now facing a climate emergency and big losses of organisms that are irreplaceable strands of Earth's web of life. Our survival is at stake. The price is hefty and getting steeper. Earth's declining health and our increasing number have created a world of constant conflicts over Earth's diminishing wealth. Conflicts like over how much of a geo-reserve area is to be preserved or to be used for resorts or for offices, or how much of our seas are for fishing and how much for skirmishing, and how much of our lands are for crops or how much for condominiums. These are conflicts not because of Earth, but because we want to have more from Earth. These are conflicts about our failure to rein in our appetites and our lusts for what Earth has, far more than Earth can give. These are conflicts that are consequences of our collective failure of virtue, so that despite our taunted brilliance as a species, we seem to be now committing mass eco-suicide of terrible proportion, shaming even the most foolish herd of lemmings. Conflicts are resolved either by reason of might or by might of reason. Diplomacy and negotiations are at the heart of the latter. Reason finds might in diplomacy and negotiations. They prevent and settle conflicts without us killing each other. Our common view of diplomacy is negotiations over inter-nation interest, usually relating to trade, technology, or national security. But if I might say so, these are all about us and about how we are sharing Earth's resources. Trade is exchanging goods and services made possible by what Earth has. Technology is how to get more from Earth. And national security is really about making sure that we'll have areas of Earth to safely settle and live, and areas where we can safely get the things we need. At their core, diplomacy and negotiations are about pinning down agreements on how much of Earth's wealth we can have and how much others could have. They're about us agreeing on what ways others could fill their grain bins and lumber yards and oil depots, with us also being able to do so. In this sense, environmental diplomacy and negotiations are existential issues about inclusive governance of Earth's treasures, where both converging and conflicting interests are given a say on what to do with them. We must do diplomacy negotiations and see this as necessary academic interest of environmental scholars. I venture two reasons why they should be academic interest of environmental schools and scholars. First, because many concerns of environmental science and management are the subject of most of today's diplomacy and negotiations, including biodiversity, land use, oceans, climate, and human rights and justice over access and shares of Earth's resources. I really could not imagine environmental schools and scholars being ignorant and unaware of the science, knowledge systems, and intents behind multilateral environmental agreements, bilateral treaties, and local customs and traditions on managing conflicts that all affect the state of our environment. Second, I think that environmental schools and scholars should look at how good science could avert environmental conflicts. And should conflicts occur, how good science could bolster the effectiveness of diplomacy and negotiations to settle conflicts. Conflicts are bad news to our environment, and producing good science to prevent or settle bad conflicts must be the business of environmental schools and scholars. Having skills in diplomacy and negotiations are desirable to have, including for scientists and scholars. But in my mind, environmental schools must focus on producing good knowledge on human environment dynamics and how good diplomacy and negotiations could restrain, reduce, or resolve conflicts arising from these dynamics. As I see it, it is one thing to study diplomacy and negotiations and the environment as among their concerns, and another to study how human Earth dynamics and relations could be made better using diplomacy and negotiations. The first relates to improving skills in diplomacy and is the domain of schools of diplomacy. The second is about doing good science to prevent and settle environmental conflicts and is the domain of environmental schools and scholars. There are, I think, three core questions on diplomacy and negotiations that might concern environmental schools and scholars. One, what knowledge about environmental states and dynamics and about human behaviors involved in these dynamics would likely improve diplomacy and negotiations as tools to prevent and resolve environmental disputes? Would focused attention on geobiochemical and physical ecosystems be sufficient? Or would we not need to understand wider institutional ecosystems and the extent to which they create or prevent conflicts? Two, second question. How might the constant changes of our environment, because the environment changes all the time, how would these changes likely change human behaviors and interest and conflicts over them? And how do these changes drive or constrain successes or failures of diplomacy and negotiations to prevent and resolve what essentially would be dynamic environmental conflicts? And three, what sciences and evidence could make diplomacy and negotiations better resolve present environmental conflicts without creating new and more bitter conflicts in the future? In short, environmental schools and scholars need to grapple with how good science could avert environmental conflicts and, should they occur, make them more amenable to amicable and negotiated settlements. I recognize that the possible compass of environmental science, diplomacy, and negotiations is vast, and it involves complex interplay of disciplinary competencies. What I'm suggesting today is but a rough start. It is for this reason also that I believe that a doctoral program in this area of scholarship is most fitting because it creates a wide intellectual space to explore the frontiers of diplomacy and negotiations as fields of interest in environmental science and management. So may I conclude with a suggestion on what 3 specific areas of concern might be made topical priorities of Filipino scholars on environmental diplomacy and negotiations. The first area of concern might be about how to use good environmental science to boost diplomacy and negotiations as means to prevent and resolve 10 environmental conflicts that are hounding us in this country today. These are: 1, conflicts over our dwindling forests and fisheries, and on conserving our biodiversity, which are probably the most urgent to look into. 2, conflicts over land and water use and access to fishing grounds. 3, conflicts over ancestral domains and on their cultural wealth. 4, conflicts over access and benefits from the genetic assets of our islands and seas. 5, conflicts over mining and other extractive industries and energy sourcing. 7, conflicts over loss and damage from climate change. 8, conflicts over shoreline modifications, reclamations, and dams. 9, conflicts over pollution and solid waste. And 10, conflicts over the use of genomics and novel technologies to make us survive the worsening climate emergency. The second area of concern might be to study the legacies and novelties in environmental diplomacy practices of Filipinos and how good science and good knowledge systems backstop these practices. We could include looking at the practices of our indigenous peoples for how they have been preventing and settling environmental conflicts. 2, practices used by our government, civil society, and the private sector to resolve recent conflicts. And 3, practices of environmental defenders in their bitter struggles to protect our natural heritage as a people. The third area of concern might be to explore contemporary issues in environmental diplomacy and negotiations. Among these could be emergent or extant conflicts over how to properly value our ecological and natural capital as a nation, and who would be benefiting from the genetic resources of our islands and seas, and from the high seas of the world. This is a new kind of conflict that's emerging. My take is that environmental schools and scholars must need to grapple with issues relating to diplomacy and negotiations because environment is the most fundamental platform of human civilization. As the well-respected Filipino environmental scholar and defender, Dr. Nina Galang would put it, without ecology, there is no economy, and to which we may add, no human society either. Academe must therefore seek to understand the conditions and intricate interactions of people and earth, to understand the altered states of our geographies of demographic survival as a critical element for preventing conflicts and for making it more likely than not for our environmental conflicts to be successfully resolved, not by bullets, bolos, or bombs, but by tact and talk. I'm sure there'll be more and better insights on this matter in this afternoon's discussions. Thank you very much.
Maraming salamat, Ben. Thank you, Ben, for the sharing of the brilliance of your mind. Talagang napatanga ako eh. I actually began to reflect that, when we started really brainstorming the idea of this program, Ben was with us. We were doing it via Zoom. And from then on, we start the dirty work, uh, fed by a healthy discussion with colleagues at SESAM. So thank you very much, Ben. You're always a part of SESAM. And we hope that our younger faculty, our younger scholars, our students, nakangiti yung isang estudyante doon, our future students, nakangiti din siya. We especially invited some of our prospective students to join the technical session so they know what they are getting into. Mahirap na yung may surprise. The next, we are also honored to have with us, to talk with us, environmental diplomacy and negotiations in relation to governance of natural resources. He is Dr. Al-O Orolfo from the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. He is currently the Director of Forest Assisted and Special Project Service Office of the DENR. Dr. Orolfo is an output-oriented public manager, resource manager, who works seamlessly in both technical and in the management realms of the public sector, specifically focusing on sustainable environmental governance. On the field of management, he pushed DNR, the National Capital Region, to have triple ISO certification. Grabe. Quality Management System, ang taas, Environmental Management System, and Occupational Safety and Health. Public service, he also pushed for a public service continuity plan and the data privacy management manual even during the height of the pandemic. Director Orolfo initiated the creation of the Burias-Ticao Protected Seascape, the largest national park in Bicol region. The launching and adoption of Gawad Tagailog for most improved estero in NCR. Establishment of the 7th Ramsar site and 2nd East Asian Australian Flyway in Negros Island. So, a lot of work, a lot of outcome-oriented projects were initiated and supervised by Director Orolfo. He has a background in agriculture, major in agroforestry from Bicol University. He has a diploma in agribusiness management and Master of Management, major in development management, and cognate in environmental studies. His doctorate is in human resource management. So, friends and ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. Al Orolfo of the DENR.
Thank you very much, Dr. Victoria Espaldon. To the members of the Diplomatic Corps, our University of the Philippines Los Baños Chancellor, Dr. Jose Camacho Jr., our Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Cobillian, our Dean for CSAM, Dr. Rico Ancog. Let's also recognize the presence of our first Dean of CESAM, the pillar of CESAM, a former discussant a while ago, Dr. Ben Malayang, our former Undersecretary as well,
While I was studying at CDEM, I've seen the first batch of SESAM. I was supposed to transfer to SESAM. But I already signed the scholarship contract, so I could not transfer to SESAM. And of course, to the notable guests, good friends, ladies and gentlemen, to all of you, good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, particularly the School of Environmental Science and Management, for pioneering the environmental diplomacy and negotiation curriculum program. Let us give a round of applause to CESAM, the pioneer in Southeast Asia. I could remember I was the pioneer staff also of the very first International Affairs, Environmental International Affairs Office of the DNR way back 1988 before the Rio Earth Summit. So kami po yung nagpe-prepare ng mga documents before nung bata pa kami. So nakita ko na ngayon yung importance ng ating diplomacy. So let me present to you now the outline of our discussion. So may I request the technical staff? Okay. So this will be the outline of our presentation. We're going to discuss introduction to environmental diplomacy and negotiations. Some major global environmental challenges. I think some of them already mentioned by our first discussant. And why negotiations are crucial for environmental issues, major environmental agreements, and I'll dwell specifically on UN Framework for Conventions on Climate Change because this is actually the most, I think, very popular among all of us, especially here in the Philippines because we are one of the most vulnerable country in terms of climate change. I just came back from Korea. I attended the 18th Forum on Jeju. It is a forum on sustainable development in the Indo-Pacific. And I just learned also one negotiation platform there. It's called the subnational diplomacy. This refers to the non-actors, non-states group that can also push environmental agreements in a different platform. But they can be at the back of the government. So I think this can be also part of the course. At this critical juncture of our history, let's have the next slide. We are gathered here today with the shared recognition of the urgent challenge we face. We are bearing the brunt of changing climate, resulting in stronger typhoons, prolonged droughts. According to Pag-asa, we'll have the El Nino phenomenon later, rising sea levels, and a host of other devastating effects. The undeniable truth is that increasing global temperatures is driven by human-induced climate change and has intensified in this environmental crisis. So in the long-term global climate risk index, Philippines is ranked as number 4. Next slide. As we witness the destructive power of this natural disaster, we are reminded of the pressing need for action. It is a time of great concern, but also a time of tremendous opportunity. We have the chance to come together as a country to bridge our differences and to negotiate meaningful solutions that can safeguard our country and planet for future generations. Hence, we need to be active in different multilateral environmental agreements, treaties, among others, but this needs capacity on diplomacy and negotiations. Next slide. So there are two things that we would like to emphasize in this forum. First is about diplomacy and negotiation. Diplomacy is the management of relationship between countries. But of course, we can say that this is also present even in our intergovernmental discussion among our local government units. They have also boundary conflicts, conflicts on resources within their area, regional conflicts. Negotiation is the process of discussing something with someone in order to reach an agreement with them or the discussion themselves. So that's why in diplomacy, there should be debate. After the debate, there should be discussion and finally an agreement. Next slide. Further, on public diplomacy, it deals with a specific governmental form or function of public relations, strategic communication of a state in the international arena. And of course, as we say, communication must be a two-way process to attract both foreign publics and engage them in creation, negotiation of meaning that ultimately supports a national foreign policy. For environmental diplomacy, example of that is it focuses on global public goods, the environment and associated issues like climate change, loss of biodiversity, and of course, natural resources. It started from discussion on regulating the use of natural resources and of course, pollution. Now, what are the different elements that we should learn on environmental diplomacy? Next slide. First, there should be a tool for managing international environmental issues. A major source of conflict involving environmental resources are their uses, damages in their quality, resulting from their use, and varying intent and idea on their use and management. These differences of views vary across countries, societies, and human races because of varying cultures and practices involving the use and management of environmental resources. And we even have that kind of local conflicts, like in Mindanao region. Some societies are compassionate in caring of their environment. Others are opportunistic and rent-seeking. Hence, there is the inevitable conflict in governance of environmental resources and ecosystem, even in the atmosphere, water, and land ecosystems. The good news is that humans have come to recognize that they have to agree on the use and management of these environmental commons. Hence, the birth of what we call as environmental diplomacy. To avert impending problems involving this ecosystem on which they are all mutually dependent on for survival or for long-term socioeconomic development. Because, after all, we have only one Earth. The concept of environmental diplomacy is a process of discussing, debating, and eventually agreeing on how to best move forward on the optimum use and management of these common resources for the common good in a fair and equitable manner. Rules of engagement and outcomes are agreed by the protagonists or the negotiators themselves, including monitoring and evaluation of processes and results. The need for diplomats or negotiators is essential as they have acquired the skills and art of advocating for their country's interest in the global stage and to push for comprehensive strategies to combat climate change. Aside from being intellectually capable and an effective communicator, so these are the possible competencies of our graduates soon, they should maintain composure and be a voice of reason and resilience, working tirelessly to secure the resources and support necessary to mitigate and adapt to climate impacts. For climate negotiations on the UNFCCC, they will have to prepare documents like position papers, proposals, and even develop new concepts and ideas that may turn into mechanisms for negotiations. The negotiators will also have to forge alliances with different negotiators, consult experts and officials to ensure commonality and consistency of position on its issues. So these are the major environmental global challenges. Climate change, deforestation, as mentioned by our first discussant. Indeed, there's conflict on the use of our forest because we have multiple tenure instruments inside our forest lands. Loss of our biodiversity, specifically the wildlife trafficking, water scarcity. We have now various water-stressed areas. And of course, pollution that cross national boundaries, like the ASEAN haze, if you remember. Why negotiations are crucial for environmental issues? The subject of environmental diplomacy and negotiations cover a wide range of topics of this program, and it will equip and develop competent environmental leaders who can bring good science and the respective countries' international environmental policies. So we always go back to science as part of our evidence-based decision-making. and relations into resolving and managing environmental conflict toward nationhood and sustainable development interest. What are the other major environmental agreements? We have the Paris Agreement, Convention on Biological Diversity, Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete the ozone layer. These are for the major greenhouse gases. And the previously Kyoto Protocol that we all agreed in 1997, but mostly related to the rich and developed countries. Key principles of environmental diplomacy also includes transparency and information sharing, ensuring access to accurate and reliable data. Common but differentiated responsibilities should address the diverse capacities and contributions of the different negotiators or nations. And part of environmental diplomacy principle is precautionary approach. I'll discuss this later further. It should be part of the addressing the uncertainty or environmental risk. And of course, the integration of these conflicting interests. So there should be balance on economic, social, and environmental concern. Now let's focus on the UNFCCC. The UN has focused on public diplomacy since its foundation with the creation of the United Nations Information Office, established in New York in 1942. Then in 1989, the UN General Assembly provided a mandate to negotiate what became in 1992 the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC. Environmental diplomacy truly became of age in 1992 during the Rio Earth Summit, or what we call as the onset. So let me show to you the UNFCCC timeline in key moments. Next slide. So from 1993 up to 2020. So 2016, we got the Paris Agreement. It was fully agreed in 2015, 16, then 2020, we have these new protocols. Now let's focus on this objective of this UNFCCC. The ultimate objective is, of course, to have the stabilization of climate at a level that would prevent dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system within a time frame sufficient to allow ecosystems to adapt naturally to climate change. Actually, if we could see and read the reports, we now even going beyond the agreed 1.5 degrees centigrade. So since 1992, the UNFCCC has been primary multi-level vehicle for international cooperation among national governments to address greenhouse gases that induce climate change. So what are the principles of the convention? Okay, we have 4 principles to remember. Number 1, parties should protect the climate system for the benefit of present and future generations of mankind. So intergenerational. But on the basis of equity and CBDR, or what we call as common but differentiated responsibilities. Number 2, burden of mitigation must fall upon the shoulders of the developed countries or parties. And number 3, adaptation is the main priority for developing country parties. And finally, number 4 is about the precautionary principle. The precautionary principle could not be waived. Even there's lack of scientific certainty. So therefore, it should always be part of the convention. Since 1992, the UNFCCC has been the primary multilateral vehicle for international cooperations for the GHG-induced climate change. So let's present to you now climate negotiations. So there are different forms. We have the institutional and negotiation structures, meetings and outcomes in events, negotiating blocks, and the Philippine delegation. So let's go one by one. Let's proceed with the institutional and negotiation structures. These structures are based on the different articles of the UNFCCC. So we have what we call as the COP, or conference of parties. It's like last December, we have the COP for our CBD. Then we have also CMP. These are the conference of parties serving the meeting of the parties. Then the CMA. These are the another subgroup within the conference of parties. We have also subsidiary bodies. We have subsidiary body on science and technological advice. It gives the technical inputs. Then subsidiary body on implementation. It also discusses the operations. And we have what we call as ad hoc working groups. These are temporary groups that's part of the negotiation. And other bodies we call as working groups, contacts group, drafting group, and legal drafting group. So ito yung mga dapat pag-aralan na magiging estudyante ng ating course. So napakaraming trabaho na dapat gawin nila. Now let's proceed to the next slide. It's about meetings, outcomes, and events. So we have formats of meetings. We have the plenary, wherein all members of the conference of parties are there. Then contact group meetings. Informal meetings are also allowed in the convention events. We have the informal consultations, coordination meetings, bilaterals between two countries. Outcomes, decision conclusions are part of the events, and side events and press conference. Finally, wherein we announce what are the different agreements of the different parties of the convention. We have what we call as negotiating blocks. Okay. We have the group of 77, which part of that is China, the European Union, Environmental Integrity Group, Umbrella Group, Country Group, and Subgroup. So sino-sino po itong mga within this group. Within the group of 77 in China, we have the African Group Negotiators. So we have the Independence Alliance of Latin America and the Caribbean, Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America, Association of Small Island States, Arab Group, Basic or Brazil, South America, Africa, China, in India, Coalition for Rainforest Nations, LDCs, Least Developed Countries, LMDC, Like-Minded Developing Countries, SEEDS or Small Island Developing States. So many voices that we have to listen. Of course, we have the European Union, representing the 28 member states of the Union, and Environmental Integrity Group. The members here are Mexico, Monaco, the Republic of Korea, Switzerland, Georgia. And for the umbrella group, it's membership, Australia, Belarus, Canada, Iceland, Israel, Japan, New Zealand, Kazakhstan, Norway, Russian Federation, and Ukraine, and of course, finally, the United States. Now let's see what Philippine delegation, how we develop our group. We have the pre-COP. It will be useful to visit, if you'll be part of the UNFCCC, it will be useful to visit first the website weeks in advance to download relevant documents such as the annotated agenda per workstream and information notes for participants so that you'll be given correct information that you should have. Then the COP proper, wherein we have the draft decisions document per workstream will be springboard to the negotiations during the COP. It is helpful to review this repeatedly before and during the COP in tandem with intervention drafts presented by the relevant agencies. And the post-COP, it is useful to review adopted decisions after the COP to determine ways of forwards with the relevant agencies. That's why DNR, after we attended the COP, we call our different stakeholders and we present the outcome of the COP events. Now, let's have the Philippine positions in the following work streams. For the mitigation, the Paris Agreement did not adopt the clean development mechanisms of the Kyoto Protocol, which makes the future of the adaptation fund uncertain. So that's why up to now, Philippines was not able to access the billions or millions of available adaptation funds. So right now, Philippines, we were able to adopt the Global Environmental Facility since I think already we are on the 8th cycle already. So we are robust in engaging the Global Environmental Facility Fund. Right now, we have what we call as Adaptation Fund, two projects that we are trying to develop right now. We have the Green Eastern Seaboard Corridor with 28 LGUs And we visited Tawi-Tawi lately. We have one adaptation fund there together with EU. So they have the Energy Nexus Water Project. So this is the first AF project. Because AF fund is being managed by the Department of Finance. So you have to learn also who are the managers of these different funds that is available related to climate change and other conventions. Like for the GF, it's the DNR is the political partner. For the AF, it's the DOF. Forest. The country's last UNFCCC submission on forest was in 2014. So matagal na. So College of Forestry, paki-review yung ano natin, but 2014 pa yung ating position dito. And the guidance for activities relating to reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, that was the time that we adopted the RED+. Okay, so that's why Philippines is lagging behind now in terms of carbon trading, green bonds, because we did not take off from the RED+. So therefore, we have to review how we can proceed further to avail of this carbon emission trading. Adaptation in agriculture. The last UNFCCC submission on adaptation by the Philippines was through Vietnam on behalf of ASEAN member states. According to the submission, ASEAN views adaptation measures include interventions relating to policy, planning, and finance. So the Global Environmental Facility Fund also supports projects related to land degradation. But right now, even DNR, together with the Department of Agriculture, we have only one project located in Mindanao accessing this fund for land degradation. So we're lagging behind also in addressing our commitment to have a regenerative and productive agriculture. Now, for the loss of damage, the Warsaw International Mechanisms for Loss and Damage associated with climate change impacts was established under the CANCOM adaptation framework during COP19 in Warsaw, Poland. In November 2013, to address loss and damage associated with climate impacts, including extreme events and slow onset events in developing countries, particularly vulnerable to adverse effects of climate change. Loss and damage refers to the human lives, species, habitats, and infrastructure. So yung pong nako-cover ng loss and damage. For the climate finance, the Philippines was successful in making sure that scaled-up financial resources aim for balance between adaptation and mitigation. So we are focusing now more on the adaptation. The country pushed for this balance, recognizing the current financing is still skewed towards mitigation actions. And as a vulnerable country, negotiated for grant-based adaptation finance. During the high-level ministerial dialogue on climate finance in Morocco, during COP22, the Philippines reiterated the need to enhance climate finance flows through multilateral, bilateral channels and devoid of usual conditionalities. That's why we have what we call as implementing agencies like UNDP, UNIDO, Conservation International, and they are directly talking with the government. I hope I gave some enlightenments how we can have this diplomacy and negotiation at the international level, and we focused on the concern on climate change. Thank you very much. Congratulations again, and I hope that we produce high-level negotiators out of this program. And join the DNR.
Hello. May we request Dr. Ben Malayan to join us on stage for the open forum? So we hear the thank you very much, Director Rolfo, for the enlightenment, and it's like a status report of how we do in UNFCCC, one of the major negotiations we are undergoing as a country. So very interesting. We will open the floor to questions from the audience. Any question? Okay. Si, ay, okay. Please introduce yourself for documentation purposes.
Good afternoon. I'm Joel Adriano from SideDev.net. I'm also a graduate of SESAM, and Dr. Malayas is actually my advisor in my master's. Just a clarification. I know it's actually the next topic, but I would like to hear whether your thoughts on uh, the difference between science diplomacy and environmental diplomacy, or if there's any difference, or how do you exactly kind of envision to integrate science diplomacy within the course offering? Thank you.
And then, tugi-tugi sa kalatayan.
Sa,
And then you next.
sa madaling mga pagsabi, when we refer to science diplomacy, this usually refers to establishing collaborations among scientists from different countries and in positioning certain topics for common discussion. Example, when you want to establish international research organizations like ERI or CIRCA, these are results of science negotiations across country. Another example would be science negotiations relating to topics that are of importance to different countries like protected areas. Having, for example, a system of heritage protected areas among ASEAN. That's a subject of science negotiations. In environmental negotiations are similarly about that. But the study of environmental diplomacy is something else. It's more about looking at the utility and power and potency of environmental science to backstop and bolster the solution or prevention and resolution of conflicts over environmental amenities and assets. That's the difference, I think. So ibang istorya yon kasi when you talk the object of environmental diplomacy is the prevention and resolution of conflicts over environmental assets and amenities. While science negotiations, the object is to establish collaboration as well as expansion of science enterprises. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there other questions? If none, I think I have a quick question, but this is relating to, uh, this is pertaining to the current use of science in the current environmental diplomacy work at the DNR. How do you assess the level of utilization of science in negotiating for example, climate change or convention on biodiversity?
Well, as I said a while ago, in the negotiation right now, specifically it's about environment, there should be evidence-based. So therefore, as such, science-backed data is very important. So that's why we need, of course, advices from many experts that should form part of our documents. Because in any negotiation, they always look for data.
Hi, I'm Karen Ferguson from the British Embassy. I just had a quick question, and I think Dr. Ben touched on it a little earlier, but I'm just curious to hear a little bit more because this is such an innovative PhD that I'm curious to know, I guess, firstly, what do you think are the set of skills that will set the students from this PhD aside from a usual graduate of environmental science? And what teaching forums and innovative techniques are you going to use to take them from being more traditional science communicators to being good diplomats and negotiators? Thank you.
Most diplomats and negotiators, if I might say so, try to reflect an interest that's already formed. So within the country, there is a formed interest over what should be the position of the country with respect to the climate change agenda of the world. We have very clear, we form certain positions that we bring to negotiations about biodiversity loss. But the forging of that position is often wrought with a lot of controversies and disputes. And my hope is very good students and scholars of environmental diplomacy could muster the power of science, not just in the natural sciences, but as well in understanding human behaviors and interests, or some people call it the political economy of the environment, so that there is a better nuancing of what should be the proper position of a country, not just from the perspective of business agenda or political agenda, but more importantly, the long-term scientific interest, science-based interest of the country. For example, it's very easy to then forge positions about what to do with biopiracy. But biopiracy has a lot of science that needs to get into it. Exactly what kind of genetic materials should we be protecting in this country, and to what extent should we be doing it? These are parts of what science could then inform government as to what should be our critical position on biopiracy. Would it be biopiracy in terms of macrobiota or microbiota? Would we want erythromycin to be again taken out of the Philippines without us earning from this 23 billion a year industry, which came from a microbe in the Philippines? So all of these things are science-based. Then government forged a position that they can then bring to international diplomatic processes. I hope that I'm helpful.
Parang si Chancellor Sanchez may gustong itanong. Sorry. Parang paborito siya.
Okay, I have a question for Sir Ben. Sir Ben is also my professor when I was taking my masteral degree in SESAM. And nakalimutan mo, Vicky, you forgot that Sir Ben is instrumental in as a resource person and a key person in the creation of the ISAM in UP Diliman, di ba? So the same program. So, sir, because of your wide experience, can you please share your experiences in negotiating for the environment at the national and regional level? What are the difficulties you encountered that we need to prepare for? So ano ba, sir, ang experience nyo in actual Philippine setting, sir?
Okay, I'll have to be very diplomatic about this because there are countries that are involved. We had a situation before when we thought it of the interest of the Philippines to have the ASEAN Biodiversity Center be headquartered in the Philippines. At that time, the decision has to be made by ASEAN. Malaysia, our neighbor, also wanted it there. So, actually, that was my first foreign assignment trip when I was in DNR in an ASOEN meeting to discuss ACB that time, ang tawag noon, no? So, Malaysia was very, of course, as Philippines was, adamant on wanting to have it there. Pero ang nangyari, there was something that happened that Malaysia became interested in ASOEN support for their urgent program with Japan, the Malacca Strait. So I thought, uy, interesado pala sila dyan. They need our support to get that. And because it was a urgent program for their prime minister, so I withheld our vote for it until they will vote for ACB to be with us. So, ganun lang. Coffee, actually, it was nothing big. It was just sitting down when the vote came to vote for the Malacca Strait program. I did not vote, and then, of course, like in any ASOEN meeting, suspend the proceedings, and then the chair, who is also the Malaysian, wanted to talk to me over coffee. So yun lang. So coffee is a powerful tool for this. Okay, that's one. Yan na lang muna.
Galing talaga.
By the way, Malaysia was very happy that we also had our support for the Malacca Strait program.
So probably you also have your vast experience.
Let me relate that question also to example when we push for the creation of the Ticao Boreas Past Protected Seascape. So this is a sub-regional negotiation. You have to talk with the local government units. You have to talk with the CSOs, non-government organization, and of course, different agencies that is involved in the Boreas Ticao Protected Seascape. So of course, you have to connect the negotiation through this overarching policy, which is the INAIPAS Act of the country. And from that, they were able to understand that protecting this area, it has so many global and local impacts to the country and to the community as well. First, they protect the livelihood, they protect the biodiversity, they have sustainable income within the protected area, and of course, it becomes also serves as the carbon sink. And of course, our contribution also to the protection of the biodiversity. So you just have to link the negotiation using the overarching policy. Unfortunately, in our country, example, overarching policy for green economy or accelerating the green economy of the country, what we have are sectoral policies, like the e-vehicle law, we have the renewable energy, we have the EPR, extended producers responsibility. If we can have a possibly interlinked overarching policy that everybody should go and follow, I think that would accelerate the way we address this different conflict and of course possible issues in the use of our natural resources. Of course, in our office, Foreign Assisted and Special Project, we have also international projects that involve other countries. Example, the SAEP, Strategic Action Plan for South China Sea, that involves Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines. Because we would like to use this platform of part of our, having this kind of cooperation within these different countries within ASEAN. That also talking about the South China Sea protection of the South China Sea. So we're not talking here of the national political conflicts, but rather we're talking here of the boundaries related to the protection of the marine resources. So that's also what we do.
Dindo, I just want to add something. Sometimes you need to look at something of common interests to the conflicting parties so that from conflict you go into collaboration. That's what we are trying to do with respect to the West Philippine Sea. If you look at the West Philippine Sea, there are two strata of conflict over it. The first one is, of course, the West Philippine Sea as a territory. And so there is conflict about who would have jurisdiction over this seascape. But there's also another face of the West Philippine Sea, and that is it's a life system. And as a life system, it must be protected because it is of common interest to virtually all riparian nations around the South China Sea, including the PRC. And so if you highlight that the value of its being a heritage seascape to most of Filipinos as well as Asians, and in fact even the world. And we can show that it has value to the world where 23% of the global trade pass through these seascapes. It just might be that we change the narrative from that of confrontation to that of collaboration over what is of common treasure to us. So sometimes that can be the trick, to look for something that is actually more valuable if shared as against something that is valuable to only one or two of the conflicting parties.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the question. Are there Don? Yun na. Seniority first, hair first.
Actually, this is not a question, but just an additional point to amplify the need. I think Director Orolfo mentioned earlier that there is now this subnational types of diplomacy. Now, when we talk about environmental diplomacy, we basically talk about science diplomacy. And beyond environment, there is a fertile landscape out there for science diplomacy. And it is here where there's a need to involve what we in the IR language, of course, Region Carl would know this, we call them the epistemic communities. For those who are knowledgeable in IR, we have different tracks. You have track 1, track 2, and track 3. Most of the formal diplomacy that are happening right now, UNFCCC, all these agreements, happen in track 1. It's good that Ben mentioned about the need to explore innovative ways in the West Philippine Sea. It is because sometimes the role of the engagement of the states are very much prevented by formal niceties. Like in the ASEAN, for example, we have this very, very limiting norm of unanimity, that there has to be all countries must agree. Only one would disagree, it's all. So, but beyond that, you have to go to the non-state actors. And this is where there are a lot of promise. The Mekong region is full of this. Transboundary problems are being solved when local government units in Laos interact with governments in China. The twin cities agreements, sister cities are happening right now. So this is going beyond formal diplomacy. So I think that's important. And I think the PhD and the EDN will include that in the discussions because it's something that is, and it is also here that scientists will play a part. Because, and I think this is something that we need to really put emphasis on, considering the fact that the material that we are looking into in the program is very much the domain of tracks 1.5 and tracks 2, which is basically where scientists come in. Kasi ang nangyayari sa atin ngayon, yung kunyari sa UNFCCC agreements, we involve scientists but they are consultants. But when the formal diplomacy, ang humaharap na mga diplomats, DFA, so yun dapat nang strengthen no, mainstream yung pag-input ng science community into the diplomatic process, not just as an afterthought or a comma or a period, that we are part of the sentence. I think that is something that needs to be amplified, and I think we assure everyone that the EDN program of SESAM would cover that very much. We're not just confined to the traditional state-to-state discussions, but even we have even the people-to-people, we call them track 3. The people-to-people diplomacy is also there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And maybe hear from, sige, ikaw.
If I may add to the statement of Dr. Contreras, even in BIMP IAGA, the Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, East Asian growth area, from 0 GDP, now it has a 285 billion GDP. What we emphasize there more is actually more on B2B. So the growth of the area was pushed further by the B2B and of course the interaction between people to people.
Thank you.
Yes. First, congratulations to SESAM under the leadership of Dean Rico and of course to the UPLB community led by Chancellor Dong for this new program. No? Iba pa siguro yung background on how we heard from Chancellor Dong that this is one of the shortest, if not the shortest, period for approval of a PhD program. Perhaps later we can share how it was approved at the level of the board, but it's another milestone for UPLB. So congratulations and my sincere appreciation to our distinguished speakers. I was listening intently to the discussions. Somehow it evoked memories of classes, masters, even undergraduate, and I will be teaching international relations next semester. So this is sort of a refresher course for everyone in the last hour. My question is, this June marks the first year of Bongbong Marcos Jr. as president. What is your prognosis in terms of the agenda for the environment under this administration? And second, I was also listening to Professor Tonton earlier when he mentioned people-to-people diplomacy. And in this age of disinformation, how do you engage, even practice public diplomacy? Because one critical component of diplomatic practice is effective communication and making your agenda acceptable to your intended audience, to the publics. So these are the two questions for our distinguished speakers. Thank you very much again for the excellent discussion.
Okay, for the Philippine government, it's already spelled out in our Philippine Development Plan. Philippines will go for green economy. We create more green jobs. So therefore, we should need to accelerate our policies. And of course, our access to support to accelerate our green economy. For the what's the next? That's the second question. Is about communication. Yeah, I already emphasized in my talk a while ago that any negotiation should be two-way process. So there should be a complete loop. Second, there should be transparency. Now, how to communicate diplomacy to our population or to the younger set who are now into Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter? I think we should have one single team or communication so that there should be no conflicting ideas there that should be delivered. So the team, the talk should be consistent.
I think it was 3 days ago that I saw this article. I think it was Guardian or it was Washington Post. I'm not sure which one now. About people not being clear on issues because scientists are not also being clear on how to communicate these issues to people. And so the idea here is there's so much among us in the science, in the community, that's to be at fault. We love to show off using our jargons and talking in always the intricate standards of science, numbers, statistics, graphs, as if that's the one that would impress us. Of course, it will impress us in the science community. But it's another thing to talk of that to people that are in the marketplace every day, who are in driving the bus and driving the jeepney. Ayaw natin pumupunta doon eh. We feel that it is too low for us to get into the language of the street. Now, for as long as you are not able to communicate, like for example, you're not able to communicate statistical trends in simple terms, walang mangyari. Science and as well as diplomacy could not benefit from science when we are not able to translate to diplomats the language of the street. I mean, into the language of diplomats, the language of science. the language of science is one thing. That's very clear. We need to use it in order to facilitate communication among scientists. But that's intended for communication among scientists, not to the policymakers. So I got a big, if you will notice, I used in my talk very simple words. I didn't anymore use technical terms because I think I'm old enough now to know that I do not need the language of science to communicate science. I think that's what it really should be. So public diplomacy cannot be facilitated until and unless scientists begin to talk in the language of the people.
Uh, I'd like also to add, we have a special project there in Mindanao. It's called the Regional Land Management or Good Governance. So what we did is to, there are conflicts because of the land use and of course tenural instruments. So we introduced what we call as do no harm communication. So this do no harm communication is one way of having a conflict management wherein you try to respect and use the language being used by the community. So if we can also introduce that as part of the skill of these students under this course, the do no harm communication or do no harm language can be another skill set that should be part of a good negotiator.
So, okay. Ito hindi ko mahihindian lalo na. Last question na ito, Doc Lansigan.
Okay, thank you very much. Congratulations first to SESAM for initiating this program, the first in Southeast Asia. And Ben mentioned about the use of good environmental science. Okay, well, about 2.5 weeks ago, an international NGO launched the so-called Southeast Asia Independent Global Stock Taking Hub in Manila. The idea is to consolidate and synthesize the data to be used by non-state actors as part of the negotiations and other discussions and debate. So the challenge is indeed how do you make good data out of regional information available to the non-state actors? My question then is for how will this program be able to entice other actors or participants in the region to make or to participate in this program, not only in the Philippines, but throughout Southeast Asia? Thank you.
Kay Dean Rico na yan kung anong gagawin nila. Dean, retired na ako.
Please join us.
Thank you for that question, sir. Definitely, later we'll be presenting more of the structure, the depth, the content, the design of our program, the PhD program. At the very core of it, we understand what is expected of a PhD program. If it is, since this is a UP program, but the science and the practice of diplomacy is the very depth that we want to really give to our students. And we understand also our part of the world. We have always that perspective that is international and global, especially that we're really talking about planet and the planetary boundaries. But we understand that much of the practice will really be within the region and the country where we form part. And to us, our very area of focus will be the Southeast Asian region. But on the other hand, the science and art of diplomacy and negotiations is not just at the international level. This one is also particularly important for a number of local concerns. This degree is actually our attempt to put this together. There is a focus on the international aspects, but much more there has to be wider applications of the practice and science of diplomacy and negotiations, the local level as well. So it's going to be an interesting program, but not just really for Filipinos, but for everyone, particularly from Southeast Asian region. Thank you. Give enter.
Okay. Talagang last na. Last question coming from the lady captain. Please. Microphone.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Captain Sharhana Paiso, Military Professor of Social Anthropology and Psychology from the Armed Forces of the Philippines. First of all, I would like to thank the UP Los Baños for inviting the Armed Forces of the Philippines in this academic and momentous occasion. So my question is, again, before I give my question, I would like to first commend the speakers. I was listening intently to all the discussions and I've learned a lot. But one thing that really took my attention is the last words of the first speakers when he said that it should not be by bullets and bombs, but by talking. And as an academician myself, I would have to agree with that. But my question is, what would be the role of the security sector in this environmental diplomacy and negotiations? So that's my first question for the both of you, sirs. And can we make this not just an academic interest, but a national security interest as well? Because on our part, as the one in the security sector, it is really one of our primary interests. And with that question, I would like to ask you both, how do we bridge the good science that into practice, particularly when dealing with national security issues? That's the first. And for the second, I would like to ask, as a social anthropologist myself, but also as a military officer, when you mentioned about the West Philippine Sea, it is really part of our mandate for territorial defense. So the question is, how do you reconcile between multiculturalism and the strategic autonomy on the regional level? Now, on the micro level, or on the tactical level, as we call it, how do you tend to give us an advice on how we could actually put it into practice on issues dealing with indigenous people, also the non-state actors, and all of those things. I'm pretty sure that the Armed Forces of the Philippines can learn a lot from what you would be advising us. Thank you, ma'am, and sir.
Captain, can you please just sit by our dean?
Thank you, sir.
Uh, I think let's start giving response to the query of Captain. The president already said to us during his inaugural address that preserving environment is preserving life. So therefore, part of security is having environmental security. So if we were able to secure the environment, we were able to make it, accessible to everyone, those who have interest for the area, and they were able to have equity and equal access and trust. I think that becomes part of the environmental security, wherein the Philippine Army and other armed forces can be part of. So let's proceed more and push more for the environmental security. Again, preserving the environment means preserving life.
Maybe we should start. I suggest that we should start rethinking the concept of national security. Too often we look at national security and the business, the national defense, as about protecting life and property. But if you look at the statistics, there are more Filipinos dying of environmental disasters than from invasions or even from insurgency. And so why is the national defense doing about protecting only a portion of the threats to property and people when it is an existential threat to the very home we have by way of our environment? So I'd like to think that when you look at national security, it has to be a security of place, not just a security of people and property. And by doing so, the national defense structure of the country must be involved in understanding what are threats to our environment that need to be attended to. Again, if you only think of security as having the better guns and the more guns, I think it's already, if I might say so, um, anarchic. I mean, archaic notion of security. I think we need to be inclusive in our sense of security. That is security of nation, meaning people, place, and the processes that allow our people to survive. So so once we start thinking that way, then the concept of protecting the West Philippine Sea should not be just be about concept of anti-access or access denial to people that we do not want to be there, but rather looking at what is in the West Philippine Sea that is of interest to us and to others, so that instead of fighting over a place, let's fight over the life system that is there in the West Philippine Sea. So I hope that one day, one of these days, the armed forces of the Philippines will not just be on the surface of the West Philippine Sea, but will be involved in understanding what's under the water, the West Philippine Sea. That's probably more a treasure to other people than just the surface. So let's go deeper.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's a very exciting way to end this panel discussion. Thank you, Director Orolfo, Ben, for giving us time to during this afternoon. We're not yet done, my friends. Pakapahin muna natin sila, Ben. um, we have a third guest for the technical session who will talk about the science and diplomacy. Medyo na-advance yung ating question, yung ating issue kanina. But we have a friend here from British Embassy, Her Excellency Lord Beaufields. Hopefully I pronounced the name right. She is currently the British Ambassador to the Philippines and Palau. She was the Director for the Middle East and North Africa of the Department of International Development from 2019 to 2021, and the Deputy High Commissioner to Nigeria from 2017 to 2019. From 2014, she's just a busy lady. From 2014 to 2017, she served as the head of the UK Department of International Development in Rwanda. And she managed multi-million-dollar portfolio of programs focusing on economic development, governance, and the social sector. A seasoned diplomat, Her Excellency Beaufields also worked in various positions in the UK government. She was lead strategic advisor of the British Prime Minister in his role as co-chair of the United Nations Secretary General's high-level panel on the post-2015 development agenda. She has also worked with private sector as financial auditor. She has lived and worked in Rwanda, Ethiopia, India, Cambodia, France, the UK, and the USA, and now in the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, let us warmly welcome Ambassador Lord Beaufields. Welcome to the Philippines, Her Excellency Beaufields.
Thank you, and thank you so much for that lovely introduction, and magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. May I start by congratulating the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, and of course, Chancellor Dr. Camacho, and of course, Dean Rico and Cog, and the whole staff of the School of Environment Management and Science for the launch of this incredibly exciting PhD, the first PhD in environmental diplomacy and negotiations in the Philippines. This is such an exciting initiative, and I'm absolutely delighted to be part of it today. In fact, when I first heard about it, I knew I wanted to be here, and I knew I wanted to say a few words, so thank you for making that happen. So I first heard about this idea from Dean Rico and Cog several months ago. This PhD is this multidisciplinary PhD bringing together aspects of environment and science and negotiation and diplomacy. And from the get-go, from the very first moment, I knew it was an astounding idea because we no longer live in a world where ideas and competencies around technical scientific issues and around communications, negotiations, and diplomacy can live separately and exist in silos. Only by recognizing the interconnectivity and interdependence of politics, the environment, and science, and only by recognizing that technical skills and scientific endeavors and softer skills like on communications or negotiations are the two sides of the one cone, can we hope to address some of the global challenges that we face today, such as sustainable environmental natural resources, sustainable management of our natural resources. I remember a time, and I'm sure you all remember such a time, when it was believed that by getting the science to support the theories about a changing climate and global warming, then scientists could influence policymakers to enact the necessary changes to avoid a catastrophic future. What time has taught us is that simply having the science to hand is not enough. It is how we deploy that information at both a policy and a real world level that delivers change. So today I would like to spend a few minutes talking about why it is essential that science in general and environmental science in particular work hand in glove with our diplomatic endeavors and negotiations in 2023 and beyond. And of course, there are lots of different angles to consider when thinking about environmental issues and science and diplomacy. The first, of course, is that we need diplomacy to support science and scientific endeavors. This is particularly stark for climate and environmental issues. Without the world coming together and talking diplomatically about the environment, we cannot solve the world's environmental and climate challenges. Indeed, we need diplomatic action to facilitate international scientific collaboration, for example, by negotiating research and development agreements and exchange programs, enabling the establishment of international research infrastructures, or indeed establishing multilateral fora such as UNFCCC and multilateral programs such as the numerous, perhaps too numerous, Global Climate Fund programs. Diplomatic know-how and experience is key to get the best outcomes for the environment. And one might think that such diplomatic know-how is not rocket science. And that is true, it's not rocket science. But there's actually quite a lot of techniques, particularly in negotiations, which when married with sound scientific knowledge and data, can lead to outstanding outcomes for the environment. And of course, there are techniques to negotiations, but we were just hearing from the panel about communications, and there are also techniques for communications. We know that good communications is not necessarily intuitive either. So the skills required for opening avenues for cooperation, collaboration, and innovations need to be married with key scientific skills for optimal outcomes. Oceans are one such area. They feature strongly in academic analyses of successful science diplomacy. The All-Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance is often cited as a science diplomacy success story. The project has gathered scientists, policymakers, public and private stakeholders together to improve understanding and stewardship of the Atlantic Ocean. Such initiatives are increasingly commonplace, and graduates from this PhD program will, I've no doubt, contribute to them. The bottom line is that without diplomacy and negotiation skills, science would not have its reach. Diplomacy can help science. It is essential to saving our world's environment. But we know that science also supports diplomacy. Scientific advice and evidence inform and support decision-making in foreign and security policies. We were just hearing about foreign and security issues. So it's really a two-way street. And not only can science inform our diplomacy, but it can also unlock our diplomacy. It can give our diplomacy wings, if you like. This is what we call science for diplomacy, i.e., the use of science as soft power to advance diplomatic objectives, for example, for building bridges between nations and creating goodwill on which diplomatic relations are built. Environmental science has the power to transcend cultural, national, and religious boundaries. When handled diplomatically, science allows for less politically charged dialogues, which in turn creates bridges that help overall diplomatic efforts. Over the years, science diplomacy has helped build common ground and peacefully manage international spaces, build trust, as well as achieve technological breakthroughs that have global relevance. And so the scientific community is in a unique position to bring together communities, academia, and policymakers to foster diplomacy in ways that are not restricted by more traditional political alliances. When we sometimes fail in hard-edged security dialogues, we can succeed in environmental negotiations, thereby creating space for more dialogue and engagement. And in the previous panel discussion, we were just hearing about the South China Sea, and I completely agree that actually addressing issues of the South China Sea through an environmental lens can help us to also address fundamental, very tricky security aspects of what's happening in the South China Sea. All of these reasons are why advocates for science diplomacy consider that science is a global enterprise with shared values that lends itself to fostering international relations. However, we also know that science is also an inherently competitive exercise, with scientific advancement seen as fundamental to ensuring national prestige and national interests. At times, this can create tension between nations. Science can underpin individual nations' competitive advantage in innovation-based economic activity, while national security and critical infrastructure depend on a nation's technological capabilities. This is what I think makes this new PhD so exciting, so timely, and so essential. It will enable students to understand and demonstrate how science and diplomacy can come together to protect our environment. It will give them tools in negotiations and communications, but it will also enable the understanding of where there are risks, where technological advantage can backfire or set back global progress, and what options might then be open and available to them. Thus, I passionately believe that the deep understanding of tools and techniques that this PhD will impart will unlock essential, critical changes in the Philippines, in Southeast Asia, and indeed for the world. To conclude, diplomacy is key to science. Science is key to diplomacy. What is less clear to me is which is more effective, whether that's scientists, diplomats, or diplomat scientists. But perhaps that question is less critical, or it can be the object of some research. Well, exactly. What is evident is that these disciplines need to work together. I hope it is clear how passionate I am about this subject. I'm honored to be part of today's celebrations for the launch of this degree program. But more than that, I and the whole of the British Embassy in Manila are open and ready to support and share learning on our own UK scientific and diplomatic experience. The UK and the Philippines have a strong cooperation history on science, on technology, and on key issues such as climate change, eco-services, data creation, and of course, environmental management. Together, we have made incredible contributions to tackling some of the biggest challenges of our time, be it through our science partnerships, our British investments, or our high level political dialogues. And I'm absolutely delighted that we've worked hand in hand with UP Los Baños on some of this as a key partner. I look forward to meeting the first students. I hear prospective students might be in the room today, and to undertaking this unique program in the not too distant future. Thank you again for giving me the chance to speak to you today. And congratulations again on the new co-program. Thank you very much.
Hello. Um, we will now have an open forum. Before we thought that you might be in a hurry, but so we're very happy to be with you and have an open forum. May I also invite Dean Rico? Yay. Yay. So thank you very much for that amazing and passionate sharing of experience and thoughts about science and diplomacy. Um, in your opinion, what could be in your wide experience, is there a gap in terms of environmental in diplomacy, in the practice of environmental diplomacy in negotiation from your uh, own exposure in diplomatic works? What are the common gaps of human resources working in negotiations, in diplomacy and negotiations?
Thank you. Well, I think as we've heard already, some of the gaps are different languages that different groups use. And so sometimes a lack of understanding, or things can get lost in translation a little bit between what the environmental scientists think on the one hand and then what the diplomats are doing on the other. So it's really about making sure that everyone's on the same page, but also equipping those scientists with diplomatic know-how so they can tailor their research accordingly to have meaningful policy engagements and initiatives, ensuring that the scientists also have negotiation skills. And I really like that negotiations is in the very title of this PhD, because negotiations is tough. And I don't think that you're generally taught that as a scientist, or you might be taught that in business school. And this is, I think, a really interesting combination of skill sets. And those people that go to the UNFCCC or other fora that can not only talk about the science, but who have that wider understanding of the strategic context and of international negotiations, and who are able to talk the talk that other delegations may be able to speak, and who are able to negotiate effectively, I think that gives them an edge. So I don't necessarily think there's, it's not about a gap. It's much more about, right, what's the next frontier? And this is why this is a field of science diplomacy that has evolved so much in the last 10 to 15 years. And there's been so much resource that has gone into it, and increasingly academic research on science diplomacy to get that evidence base of what makes it effective and where are the particular areas where we need more research and more investments in the field of science diplomacy.
Thank you very much. Maybe we can open it to people on the hall. Do you have some questions? And so far, okay. So,
Ma'am Vicky.
Okay.
Let me just personally thank the ambassador for her great support. Not just this is not the first instance when we have the ambassador supporting this endeavor, because the UK is supporting our academic practice with University of Liverpool, being collaborated with University of Liverpool. I hope, Ambassador, you're oriented on this. Anna is the one co-leading this project. In fact, last month we had a visit to Liverpool, with the president and with head chair. So and there'll be more more projects, whether funded by CHED or by the UK. But in her visit at UPLB, yeah, we will be having more engagement with the UK government, and I hope, yeah, let's thank the ambassador for her great support to UPLB. Thank you very much.
Thank
By the
you,
way,
Chancellor.
yeah.
But can I just say thank you, Chancellor? And it's a two-way loving. We're really very fond of UP Lab Los Baños. Really fond of the work that you do, the partnerships that we have, and we will continue to work hand in hand because I think we share our vision, in particular on all the areas of environmental management and sustainable livelihoods. So you can count on us.
Yeah, thank you very much. And if I only knew that Ambassador will be joining us today. Actually, we have a conference in academic practice with University of Liverpool on June 30. Yeah, at the Acacia Hotel. I think the Ambassador can make it. Yeah, yes, she's in London. But if I only knew that Ambassador will be is here with joining us, we could have launched. Remember our promise to have launched the Gumamela, honoring you, the science, Women in Science and Diplomacy series of the IPB breeding section. So, but we'll be having a separate occasion for that, Ambassador. Thank you very much for your great support to UPLB. That's the Gumamela of Alma Javier. Yeah.
Okay, if there's no question from the floor, uh, we would like to thank you very much again for profusely for being with us along all these years. I'm in the embassy and you. We are very glad that I think you have with you your climate change ambassador also. And we are looking forward to working with you further in especially in climate change and environmental management. Thank you very much. And we hope that you can send more students to, I mean, exchange students to UPLB so that there'll be like cross-cultural learnings from in this context.
Very quickly, Ma'am Vicky. Actually, there's one alumnus from UK. Remember, who did his master's in environmental science in Sesam. Yeah, remember?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He is our poster boy for internet.
Yeah, our poster boy. Yeah.
For internet, a lot of pictures. Yeah.
He
for
graduated in
internet.
2015, I think, or
Yeah,
2014.
with flying colors.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I think that's a very good example, Ambassador. Now we have our experience with the master student from UK. We actually learned a lot from a number of Southeast Asian students as well, much more from the Filipinos, as he said. But in the process, our students also learned a lot from him. So that was really a very good cross fertilization, not just culturally, but much more intellectually or academically. So we look forward to more of those collaborations also in the future.
And currently, I think Director Glenn, we have another student doing his PhD on rice straw biofuels, I think. Remember? Si, ano pangalan nun? No, from UK. Uh, Craig, yeah, James and Craig, yeah. Former student also. Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, James and Craig, yeah, James and Craig.
So related to that is the second point, really more on technology. I think the emphasis that you gave in the lecture, in the talk, which is really more on technology, it will really be very crucial to operationalize, a number of our solutions to climate change issues, to environmental pollution, and among other issues. Technology would be very perfect as a platform to then push forward together. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And to all, thank you for staying with us. Um,
All right, so that was very inspiring. We learned more about the significance of environmental negotiations and diplomacy from different points of view. They captured and shared to us the real essence of this PhD program, indeed.
Yeah, so Doc Pat, what do you think is the best takeaway you got from them?
Okay, I took down notes for each one. So I think for Sir Ben, it was in resolving conflicts. There are negotiations for might, and there are might in negotiations before we kill ourselves. I think that is very striking. I couldn't forget it, Sir Ben. And then for Sir Al, it was on the importance of environmental diplomacy, recognizing the interdependence of nations in preserving the environment, and how the negotiations are crucial to solve environmental issues. So, and the shared responsibility that goes with it. And for Ambassador Lore, the science for diplomacy and the diplomacy for science was something that hit home for me. How about you, Sir Thad? What's your note?
Yeah, from Dr. Ben Malayang, I remember he said twice, schools can now look how good science can avert environmental conflicts. He said it twice. So it's also related from what I got from Director Orolfo. We always go back to school, to science for informed decision making. So it's related. So instead of just using politics or our emotions, we can use science for the basis of decisions, especially in negotiations.
All right.
Thank you.
And now to award the certificates of appreciation, may we call back Dean Rico Angcog and Chancellor Camacho here in front.
So, okay, let me read the citation as we award the certificate. The University of the Philippines, Los Baños, School of Environmental Science and Management awards this certificate of appreciation to Ben S. Malayang for having served as the resource speaker during the technical session on environmental diplomacy and negotiations organized by the School of Environmental Science and Management held on June 5, 2023 at the Philippine International Convention Center, Manila, Philippines. Issued this 5th day of June 2023, signed Rico C. Ancog, Dean CESAM, and Jose V. Camacho Jr., Chancellor, UPLB.
All right, and the same citation is also for our next resource speaker, Dr. Al O. Arolfo. For the Gumamela of our team, the same citation also applies to our UK ambassador, Her Excellency Laurie Bofill.
invite again Dr. Ben Malayang and Sir Orolfo for another picture. Ambassador Laura Ballfields, can you still please stay with the Chancellor and Dean Rico here? Thank you. Thank you very much to our speakers.
Maraming salamat po. Thank you very much again to all three of our guest speakers. And now, asan na? Oh, yeah. And now to close our roundtable discussion for this afternoon, may I call in the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, Dr. Janet Silva.
Thank you very much. To our honored guests, thank you for sharing your time with us this afternoon. What best way to launch this very important program, PhD in Environmental Diplomacy and Negotiations, than on the celebration on the World Environment Day and with the leading names in environmental science, management, governance, and diplomacy. To our esteemed speakers this afternoon, our sincerest appreciation to all of you for generously sharing your time and wisdom with us. But after the pride of having been first to offer such a program pass, comes the pressure of having to work extra hard to accomplish the tasks at hand and to meet the expectations of the sectors we vow to serve, given the current international environmental policy landscape and political climate. I am hopeful that the PhD in Environmental Diplomacy and Negotiations will open opportunities for stakeholders, environmental activists, politicians and policymakers, indigenous communities, environmental scholars and academics, and basically every inhabitant of the earth to start asking the right questions and working together to addressing such questions. Although a great deal of it has something to do with our attitude and behavior, a good part is also, as Dr. Malayang aptly puts it, good science. With UP's commitment to honor and excellence, I trust that all of us will work together toward fulfilling the promise and potential of this program in contributing to the mainstreaming of good science in environmental policy and negotiations. A pleasant afternoon to all of you, and let us enjoy the rest of the activities that Dean Rico and Sesam prepared for the day. Maraming salamat po.
Okay, thank you very much, Vice Chancellor Silva. And now we will have a short health break, and we will have our press conference at 4 p.m. to be moderated by Dr. Antonio Contreras, Professor of Sesam UPLB.
Those who would like to have refreshments, you may now proceed to the Summit Hall at the 4th floor. We will have our cocktails there right after the press conference. Or for those of you who are interested to watch the press conference, you may opt to stay. Thank you.
Thank you.